Good day, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Before we start, I would encourage you to share this Twitter space in your different platforms, in your different groups, but also on your timeline, so that people that might be interested in the topic can also join us, but also just to get the message out. We will be recording this conversation, so in case you missed any part of it, you'll be able to come back to the recording. It's going to be available even after today's show. But overall, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and welcome to the Resistance Bureau. This is a forum that is dedicated to highlighting the leaders that are at the forefront of the struggle for freedom in Africa. So today is a privilege for us to host this timeless space that we've titled Uganda Not Alone. It places a focus on the political crisis in the aftermath of a contested and violent election in Uganda. And we hope that in this conversation, we're going to unpack themes that include issues of the erosion of democracy and the rule of law, with a core focus on the government's intensifying crackdown on political opposition, civil society organizations, and human rights defenders more broadly. So, with your contributions to this conversations as the audience, but also the panelists that we have, we're hoping that we can deep dive into the roots of the crisis, such as economic stagnation, corruption, as well as succession struggles within the ruling party, and just highlight the specific cases of repression, including the abduction and unlawful detention of opposition leaders like Kiza and the military use of force against figures like Bobby Wine.
And as always, this program will also explore the importance of solidarity and global advocacy and sustaining attention on this unfolding situation in Uganda. Overall, today's discussion will aim to spotlight the lived experiences of Ugandans facing state repression, the broader implications for democracy and human rights, as well as the practical ways in which the international community can demonstrate support and maintain pressure for democratic change, not only in Uganda, but elsewhere in the region where citizens are equally struggling and often paying the ultimate price to have their voices heard and their political will respected.
And joining us today to help us unpack these issues is a panel of phenomenal people that are doing a lot of work in Uganda, outside Uganda. We're joined today by the Honorable Winnie Kiza, a Ugandan teacher and politician who served as the official leader of opposition in the Ugandan parliament. We're also joined by Agatha Artore, a Ugandan lawyer and human rights defender known for investigative work on government corruption. We're also joined by Dr. Nyama Belina, a medical doctor and the regional secretary for Sub-Saharan Africa at the World Liberty Congress. We are also fortunate to welcome David Louis Rubungoya, a constitutional law expert and the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform. And last but not least, we are also joined by Arias Lubako, a lawyer and Lord Mayor of Kampala. He also serves as the legal counsel for detained opposition leader Kiza. We have a lot to get today. So Jeff, how about you start us off with a question for our panel?
Absolutely. And thanks, Mentade. At this time, we encourage you, as Mentade mentioned, the audience to share this space on your timeline so that more people can join us. And please hold your questions and reflections for after the panelists have given their initial submissions. And before I turn to today's panel, I actually want to bring in our colleague Paula from Intel Watch so that she can provide a really brief overview of the Uganda Not Alone campaign, which you may have seen populate your timelines this morning, including what we hope to achieve today and going forward. Paula, if you're there, please, over to you.
Thank you, Jeff, Nick, and Mantate. It's always such a pleasure partnering up with the Resistance Bureau on the incredible work you do, and such a pleasure and privilege to listen to the amazing panelists you have today. So, the Uganda Not Alone is a campaign that aims to create Pan-African and global solidarity for Uganda, so that when fraudulent elections occur, the brutalization of opposition movements, killings, abductions, and sustained persecution of citizens, we don't sit silently and let this happen. We raise our voices, amplify the courage of those on the ground, call out dictators, and speak truth to power. Now, Uganda and Ugandans are not alone in their struggle for freedom, justice, and democracy. So as this campaign grows, we will become the counterpower that society is meant to be, so that we can protect democracy on the continent and seek accountability. And the campaign ultimately aims to combat indifference and impunity. It's designed to keep sustained international attention on the Ugandan crisis, push for justice and accountability, to demonstrate to Ugandan citizens that they are not alone, and to pressure the African Union and other regional bodies to treat constitutional and electoral coups with the same sense of urgency as military takeovers. Now, electoral coups are worse than military coups. Military coups are a boiling point of oppression, while electoral and constitutional coups occur over time with the systematic and structural destruction of state institutions, the capture of the economy, the creation of family cabals that are willing to violently defend their narrow interests. These coups leave a path of destruction, unemployment, poverty, inequality, corruption, cronyism, and repression. They rob the people of their sovereignty and political participation. They also use the trappings of democracy to consolidate authoritarianism. Now, just because there is greater international regional tolerance for electoral coups, mainly because in the name of stability and the entrenchment of autocratic regimes, it does not mean that we should acquiesce. This is just the beginning of what we hope will grow to unite solidarity for other countries, including Tanzania Not Alone and others. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. It looks like we're still waiting for some of our featured speakers to access their microphones. Honorable Kiza, I see that you're on with us. Can you hear us? Are you able to speak? We've tried inviting you as a speaker.
Yes, I hear you.
Perfect. So I wanted to come to you first because as we've outlined the situation in Uganda at the outset of today's space, we see that it's really characterized by a number of things, including a continued assault on the rule of law and democracy, of course. But this has deep roots. It's been driven mainly by economic stagnation, by growing corruption within the ruling party, and also the succession struggle to replace President Museveni within the NRM leadership. So, for those listeners who are tuning in today who may not be entirely familiar with Uganda, please explain, if you could, how we got to this point and where you see all this heading.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thanks to the Resistance Bureau for putting up this space. And I would like to thank everybody who has been able to be part of this space. Uganda's democracy is at the brink of collapse. And we would like to thank you for being part of those who wish us well and those who think that we should not just remain silent, because I know that the silence of those who wish us well is as good as the torture that we go through with our enemies. Jeff, maybe fast forward, democracy is based on several key principles, without which it could not function. These principles are not just political theories. They are reflected in the lives of citizens and are protected by the Constitution and the rule of law. The principle of free and fair elections is at the heart of democracy. The principle of holding elections time to time is one of those issues that we hold so dear in a democracy. The principle of universal participation of the citizens is also another issue that makes democracy what it is. Now, while elections must be held regularly, they must be free and fair. Fair elections mean that all candidates compete for votes on equal terms. No intimidation, they have equal access to media, they are treated equally, and that another principle of citizens' participation, that not a mere holding of elections determines what a democratic country is, but that elections must be seen to be giving the voice of the people. It's also about active participation of the citizens, that they will join political parties and be part of those political parties, that they will be part of political engagements, and that nobody will be held a victim for participating in politics. That is a fair way of democracy. Democracy also has a principle of accountability and transparency. But like you all know, the recently concluded elections in Uganda, there was a shutdown of internet, meaning that our election was not really transparent. Many of us will attest to the fact that there was no free and fair election. There was just an allocation of votes. There was intimidation by the military. There was denial of access to the voters by opposition political actors, most especially the National Unity Platform. There was beating of voters and even killing, to the extent that the CDF regretted that they only killed 20 people in a week and was saying they could do better. But how do these affect the common person? Towards the elections in Uganda, many businesses closed down because they knew that there was going to be violence. Violence because they had seen it happening in the primaries of the ruling party, and because they saw the high-handedness of the military. We thought that maybe rights and fundamental rights and freedoms would be observed just like it is supposed to be in a democracy, but this was not the case. So many people closed down their businesses, and I can tell you maybe a research that will be carried out after will reveal how much money we lost in terms of billions, how many people lived under tension and were not free to participate in elections. Others feared because of the too much intimidation that had happened during the campaigns, and citizens had not been given the opportunity to even understand how to vote. Jeff, I will tell you that in our election, while there was voter registration, many of the citizens who registered to vote did not get the opportunity to vote. Majority of the young people who were registering to vote for the first time were not included in the voters register. In fact, some of us believe that it is the register of 2021 that was used in this election. Machines that were used, the biometric voter machines that were brought to help us in the election, did not operate at all. And this costed us millions of money. This money should have been used possibly for other activities that would ensure quality life for the citizens of Uganda. And those who supplied the machines are part of the system, because our system thrives on corruption, thrives on patronage. Many of those who sing praises to the regime are the ones who were given the contracts of supplying the machines worthy of millions, and these machines did not operate at all. And all these put our democracy to the dogs. To us as Ugandans, our right to vote was violated. Our right to hold our leaders accountable and therefore be in position to put leaders that we think will be accountable to us in positions of influence was snatched from us. We have people who just decided to put themselves in power. We have people who went into offices by the force of the gun, and we know that this heavily impacts democracy, seriously impacts economic development, it impacts the peace and stability of the country. Mere silence of guns does not mean peace, as all of us may know. We must ensure that everybody is at liberty to participate in elections as it should have been, that they will have rights to assemble, that they will have a right to choose their leaders without any force. But in Uganda, many people did not vote. Many people were voted for. Even those that had come out to vote were beaten, were tortured. Even when they voted for their right candidates, declaration forms were snatched from the opposition agents, beaten up, others piled up, bundled up, and taken to cells. And what does this mean? Their families are suffering because many of these people who were arrested are breadwinners in homes. Their families are in a situation of hopelessness because they can't access anything now to eat. It impacts their economics. It impacts their participation in future elections, and of course, not believing in the government that is in power. That is where we are, and to us, we do believe that everybody is invited to begin holding our leaders accountable and to demand for a clean government in Uganda. We want to thank you, Resistance Bureau, for putting up this space and showing us that you are with us. What happened here is exactly what happened in Tanzania. The only difference is that here, the internet was shut down some days before the world could see what was happening here. But people were killed. Leaders of households were killed, denying their family members of the right to have parents, the right to have their children, and of course the right to belong to a political party, right to vote your leaders without any undue influence. Democracy dictates that all actors must compete on a leveled ground, must have access to the media, but this is not what happened here in Uganda. I know that media houses lost sums of money, just like it was in the 2021 elections. Mobile money operators lost sums of money. Banks lost sums of money. Even as the citizens could not transact in terms of business. And so all this curtails democracy, it curtails development, and puts democracy at a risk. For now, let me stop it at that.
Thank you so, so much, Honorable Kiza. I think you've laid a very broad foundation for us. And I think you've painted the picture of what really is happening, especially for those that may not have been aware. There's a lot of things that you've said. I hope that we can also come back to it. But I think the emphasis that you gave on the citizens themselves and how elections must reflect the voice of the citizens, and just reinforcing this idea that there's been a violation and also a victimization of people that have chosen to participate. And that is the biggest challenge as well, because it also means that even in the power that results from such processes, again, the citizens are not able to see themselves, the citizens are not able to hold the governments accountable. So thank you so much for laying this foundation. For the rest of our speakers that are not on the mic yet, please send us a request or accept the request that we've sent you to just join us on the speaker so that you're able to speak. But in the meantime, I wanted to come to you, Agatha, because you're already on the mic. One of the most worrying developments that we've seen around elections in Uganda is an increase in state efforts to detain and hold in detention for lengthy periods opposition leaders and critical voices. Can you give us a sense of the scale of these activities and the impact this has had on opposition parties, as well as civil society structures and human rights defenders?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, so your question is about arrests and lengthy detentions?
Yes.
I see. Okay. So it's I think that the first impact it's having on Ugandans as a whole, not just opposition parties or supporters or civil societies. Is that this feeling that the state is deliberately trying to exhaust us, and trying to divert us from the sham election that it was for us now to be running after everyone they are picking up, everyone that is being disappeared, running hashtags of free this one. Today it's free Sarah related, tomorrow it's free Mwanga Chivumbi, the next day is free Lina Zedriga. So we don't have time to think about what happened, what actually transpired in both the general elections that happened on January 15th and what has continued to happen in the local council elections that have been happening, I think, until even, I think, yesterday, but one. I think there's still more that will come, but there were elections we had last week and this week. And in all elections, it doesn't matter who has gotten the highest number of votes. In many instances, when it is not a member of the National Resistance Movement, you are not declared. All that is still happening today. People are still being picked up from these elections and being disappeared. So So I think for me, my experience in this work is that we are always doing something and then they do us. We are fighting for the release of Kizza Besigye and then they disappear, his former aide, Sam Mugumya. And then you move from that and say, at least we know where Kizza Besigye and these many others are. At least we know that they are in prison, but now we need to fight for this person whose whereabouts we don't even know. And they just want to overwhelm you, keep throwing you here and there. And you start looking at the election now and the results that were declared and everything as a luxury, so to speak, because people are being killed. Like every day, I'm getting information about people that were extrajudicially killed by the soldiers, by the army. Every day, I'm getting information about people that have been disappeared. We have two women that have been missing, that were disappeared, one on the 14th and the other on the 15th, I think. If both not on the 15th, they are both deputy presidents of the National Unity Platform. We don't know where they are. There's a video of them being taken. There are videos. There are witnesses. But the state yesterday said they do not have the one for northern Uganda. And this is not the first time. They said they did not have Sam Mugumya, and he's been disappeared for about 5 months now. They said they did not have the two Kenyans, and there was even a ruling where a judge said he cannot squeeze blood out of a stone. But they came out of a state detention, military, ungazetted detention. Those that were arrested, we have not yet known the number. Every day there's news about so many that were arrested in different places. I think by now we know for sure about 600, but there are many more than that. We do not have many people, many hands and feet going everywhere that these are. So for the opposition party, NUP mainly, and their supporters, what that does is do what the state wants it to do, to put them in fear, so that they are not demanding for the transparency or accountability of what transpired in the election. So people are afraid. They know that they will be disappeared or arrested if they are lucky, or even killed. So many people have not come out to speak about the election in the way that they should. Well, as for civil society, most of the organizations that were even vocal about what's happening, and there are not many, were suspended. So now you have many of these dealing with that, trying to fight and get back to work, and they don't have resources because what followed the suspension was the freezing of accounts. So yeah, that, I think for me, that's the state of things. I have been so frustrated. I've been so overwhelmed. I imagine that's how it is for many other people. Um, the NUP people whose elections were rigged, their leader is being hunted. His family is being harassed and attacked every other night. I do not think they have any space left to go and fight and fight about what happened during this election. So we have sort of let that go and now start to deal with existential, like really, really life-threatening issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agatha. We really, really appreciate your insights and your commentary here today. And we know that you and others in your circles have been under incredible amounts of stress and harassment and intimidation. So we really, very much appreciate you taking the time and speaking so candidly. And hearing you talk in the prior submission by Honorable Kiza, we've heard many of the hallmarks of what a rigged election looks like. And lucky for us, we have on today's space the man who literally wrote the book on how to rig an election. So, Nick, I know you've probably been hearing these submissions and hearing quite a few commonalities in your research and the work that you do, not only in Uganda and elsewhere. So, I wanted to bring you on really quickly just to get some of your thoughts and analysis on what you've heard so far.
Thanks, Jeff, and hi, everyone. Solidarity to everyone in Uganda. I do think it's really important, first of all, that we really get across to our listeners that, this is not a civilian administration right now. This is effectively a heavily militarized state that is using terror to try and attack and dismantle the opposition. And you've heard that from the first two speakers. You can't do things like get together a really comprehensive list of the genuine election results that would show they were manipulated because you're in hiding. You can't actually collect a comprehensive list of the human rights abuses and the number of people that have been abducted and tortured and killed because your activities are constantly being disrupted by arrests, by your equipment being taken, by illegitimate and often illegal activities by the state. And so I think it's really important to get that across to people, the extent to which this is now, a systematic militarized state that is using terror to try and control its population. And that helps to explain also why it's so difficult to sometimes get the kind of data that we might want to show how the election was manipulated, just like in Tanzania, where the government shut down the internet, made it very difficult for people to actually get evidence of the human rights abuses to get out of the country. We're seeing similar things now in Uganda. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that I think are really important to keep in mind when we're thinking about, where Uganda is and where it's moving. I've been sort of working on elections in Uganda, I guess, for sort of 15 years now. And there are certain things that, have been common features, right? So if we go back to the last election, we know that election was manipulated. We actually demonstrated using some of the forms officially released by the Electoral Commission itself that results had been deleted from Bobby Wine's total by literally Tipexing out some of the results and deleting them from his total. So we know that there's actually sort of polling station level manipulation. We also saw, of course, at the last elections, I'm talking the one before the one we're talking about today, that we saw large numbers of people being arrested, tortured. That level of violence from the Museveni regime is not something that's new today. It's been something that's been a feature of the last couple of elections. And of course, one of the things that's on many of our minds today is that our friend Kizza Besigye was not only abducted and illegally renditioned from Kenya to Uganda, but is on charges today in Ugandan courts without access to proper legal representation and without proper medical help, despite the fact that he's in a very poor state of health. And our thoughts are with him today and his situation. So those things are long term, and we know they've been here. But I think there's a couple of things that are actually stressing the Museveni regime additionally right now that explain some of the things that are happening in this election. One of those things is what happened in Kenya in 2024. I think Ugandan political elites looked at the mass uprising of young people in urban areas in Kenya against William Ruto, and it terrified them. And then they saw the mass uprising of people in Tanzania against that electoral manipulation, and it terrified them. And I think the message they learned from that was that populations across the region are becoming increasingly unwilling to live under authoritarian, corrupt, and arbitrary regimes, and that they will rise up. And what they've done is essentially try and get in a preemptive strike, try and get in before opposition supporters are able to protest, try and get in before those kinds of movements start in Uganda in the way they have in other countries, because they're terrified that they actually lack legitimacy. They're terrified that they've lost opposition areas. We know, for example, that Bobby Wine is tremendously popular in urban areas and often wins urban votes, something like 70-30, 80-20 against Museveni. And they're terrified of losing political control. So the regional context, the urbanized, youthful protests we've seen across the region, I think are one important factor here. A second factor that I think is really important is that we have instability within the ruling party for itself. And we didn't necessarily have that 10, 15 years ago. But Museveni is getting increasingly old. We know that his son is desperate to take over. We know that because he tells us himself on his Twitter tirades, where he goes on and on about how he should be the president of Uganda when he's not talking about how he's going to invade Kenya or how he's going to kill Bobby Wine, right? Just to mention two of his more controversial tweets over the last few years. So that instability within the NRM, because we know that there are many people in the party and the military that do not want the son to take over, do not trust Mahuzi, do not think he would be a good leader, are desperate for him not to become the next president. That competition within the NRM itself is generating instability. And in this election, we are seeing different factions of the NRM trying to prove their popularity and trying to assert their authority. So when we see Mahuzi go on his Twitter rants and talking about killing Bobby Wine and the things he will do, he's not just being a kind of loose cannon son who's been too privileged and doesn't understand, how to do politics. He's sending a signal to Uganda. He's sending a signal within the NRM about his intention to be the next president and what he will do to people who oppose him. So this election, I think, if we put it in that broader context, needs to be understood as an election in which the NRM is trying desperately hard to stop the processes we're seeing across the continent play out, but also a election in which those internal processes are actually making it harder and harder for the NRM to actually present a united front. The thing that really worries me is that that's going to get worse, right? If we look at what's happening regionally, the rise of people who demand new forms of citizenship, who demand accountable government is not going away. If anything, the processes of urbanization, etc., that we've seen in the last 10, 20 years are going to continue apace. So that's going to put even more pressure on the NRM as we move forwards. And the succession battle is going to get even more intense as Museveni gets increasingly old and unwell. So one of the things we need to flag for people, I think it's really important, is that this is probably going to get worse before it gets better. And that's why it's so important to understand, whether you're an international donor, a multinational company, a civil society group, etc., that this is actually going to have significant impact on political stability and economic growth, jobs, trade, all the things people care about beyond democracy, as well as democracy itself. So I'll leave it there for now. Just thought that sort of more comparative lens might be useful. And just to say solidarity with everyone who's in Uganda. We know a lot of people are in hiding today. Some of the people we wanted to have on the show can't join us because they're not safe enough to join us, which really brings home, how difficult the situation is. Okay, over to you.
Thanks a million, Nick. Really appreciate that insight. You raised the case of Dr. Kizza Besigye, and we're really lucky to have Lord Mayor Irai Sokwego on the call. We want to bring him in here because he's been acting, of course, as Dr. Besigye's lawyer. And of course, Nick, as you mentioned, he remains in jail despite failing health, and he's been denied access to his doctors and lawyers. So, Lord Mayor, if you can hear us and you have access to the mic, we'd love for you to give us an update on Dr. Besigye's condition and explain why, or help explain why the government has chosen to so brazenly break the law in this manner. Is it part of a pattern? Is it going to get worse, as Nick seems to suggest? Where do you see all this headed? Would really appreciate your thoughts on this, and thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Jeffrey, and the entire team, and the conversation you have organized. I must appreciate the issues raised by the previous speakers. They are quite pertinent, and they explain the situation as it obtains in Uganda. I can only summarize it as a reign of terror, which is going on in our country. All what we are talking about is a manifestation of a reign of terror. All the institutions in this country have been decapitated. The constitution is no longer functional. We have a situation which is really absurd, whereby you have, the constitution which does not speak. You have in place a political order which does not speak to the constitution, and that clash is what is occasioning the crisis we have today. In a nutshell, we have a constitutional crisis. So in a situation where you have a constitutional crisis, you cannot have justice. Dr. Besigye was illegally re-inditioned from Nairobi. They never followed the due process. Kenya has got extradition laws or deportation laws. They were all violated. Likewise, in our country, we also have a similar legal framework because we all inherited the system from the UK. It's common law system. But all these laws were violated, including international laws governing such processes like deportation or extradition and so on and so forth. So basically, after violating that law, we have put up a spirited fight under very, very difficult circumstances. Unfortunately, again, we are yet to make headway. All the courts in this country and the judges themselves are frightened. They fear to take body decisions in accordance with the law. We have a constitutional framework which guarantees the right to liberty, which provides for things like the right to bail, habeas corpus, and a couple of other remedies provided for under the Bill of Rights. Unfortunately, they are now a mere dead letter of the law. Even if you applied for habeas corpus, the rate of habeas corpus, for many of these people who have disappeared, you will not get it from courts of law nowadays. You'll be talking about Dr. Besigye and Obedi Lutale and a couple of other NOPA activists who are incarcerated in gazetted prisons. But there are those who have disappeared without a trace. There are those who have been incarcerated in ungazetted detention centers. We have activists like Sam Gumi and others. We have a couple who have been shot dead because we have an order of shoot to kill. It is the practice of, it's the order of the day. So all these transgressions, unfortunately, cannot be addressed within the existing institutional framework we have in this country. The judges have told us in no uncertain terms that we shall not get bail for Dr. Kizza Besigye. They have, in all the applications that we have filed, they have been brazenly telling us, yes, you meet all the criteria, you have satisfied all the conditions for grant of bail. The law also provides for the same. But for strange reasons, they decline to grant bail. And that's the upside situation we have. It's not only Dr. Besigye, but even other activists. So I don't want to lament so much on this situation. I just want to focus so much on the way forward. What really needs to be done in a situation like this? We believe the international community has done us a very big disservice. In a situation where you have, violation of people's rights with impunity, crimes against humanity being committed against the citizenry, and people getting subdued, the constitution overthrown. There are mechanisms which are provided for under the international law should come to our rescue. There are cases which should be under the ICC today. We wonder why, up to now, many of these actors, the perpetrators of these heinous crimes, have not been indicted under the Rome Statute in the ICC, in The Hague. That's what is baffling some of us. Even at a continental level, we have that African court. We have this, human and people's rights court and whatnot. Well, they have not all come to our rescue. Even at a regional level here, the East African Court of Justice has not come to our rescue. We have filed petitions there. We have engaged our colleagues in Kenya, in Tanzania, the human rights organizations. We have tried to seek justice in the East African Court, all in vain. Even in the US, there is the Global Magnitsky Act. The best, yes, that has been done somehow is to impose some sanctions, to some of these key perpetrators, some individuals. But that's where it ends. If you just impose sanctions on them, the travel bans and whatnot, doesn't make them feel the pinch, to feel like, that they need not to do the things they are doing. So we feel like the international community should do something much more than what they are doing right now. The Global Magnitsky Act should be invoked against some of these individuals, because we know they have their cash stashed away in the US. They have so many, they have lots of assets there and so on. So the Global Magnitsky Act should be invoked. Secondly, the ICC should invoke its powers under the Rome Statute and indict some people against, for crimes against humanity, the torture, the present violation of people's rights, and also enforced disappearance and so on and so forth. All these are indictable at the ICC and under the Rome Statute. So we feel action should be taken by the international community. They shouldn't leave it to us. So finally, you see, when you are here and you are a lawyer and you can't get a remedy for your client, you feel so much disillusioned. And that's why we have asked the International Bar Association, you see, what is it that they are doing as the global legal fraternity? they need also to come to our rescue and intervene and see what can be done about the situation. We don't need to wait to get out of hand, or anyway, it's already worse. So there's much that needs to be done. As we speak today, Dr. Besigye's life is in danger. He can't even access private physicians. Can you imagine? He is not convicted. He's just facing, crimes that have been preferred. Offenses that have been preferred against him before, treason, terrorism, whatnot. These are offenses that have ever been preferred against him, and he was never tried and convicted. So it's a kind of a deja vu. They are coming up with the same cases, and now here we are, 1 year down the road. He has not been tried. Evidence has not been adduced, and his life is deteriorating by the day. And the Constitution guarantees the right to access to private doctors, and it has been denied. And then the world is silent about this. So we are really concerned about the deafening silence of the international community, or better still, or worse still rather, acquiescence in this. If they could be complicit, I'm sorry to be harsh on the international community, they could be complicit in this, and that is my concern. I thank you.
Thank you so much. There's a lot that you've shared with us today, but I think one of the things that you're pressing around the violation of due process and the fact that Kenya works in collaboration with Uganda to facilitate. And I think something that was also mentioned by Prof. Chisman earlier about regional movements that are rising up to push back on repressive regimes. We can already see that in the same spirit that there's movements are growing and pushing back. We're also seeing there's collaborations between countries, between leaders within the continent that are supporting each other in what they're doing. And I think that should again be of concern, because I think one of the things that you're pressing across is the idea of impunity, because for all of this to happen in collaboration with Kenya or any other country, again, it speaks into impunity, and that points to regional bodies, continental bodies, and the gaps that exist, and the kind of flexibilities that are allowed to ensure this kind of impunity. And before I go to Dr. Nyama, because our question kind of just builds on what the mayor just said, I wanted to just remind the audience that if you miss any part of this conversation, we are recording it. You will be able to access it. But we also do encourage you to share it in your different spaces for people that may not be aware of it. Like we said when we started, this is a space that is built around the idea of Uganda not being alone. We are standing in solidarity, but also by sharing, you're inviting other people to be a part of it. But also to remind those that have been requesting mics to speak that if you have a question, a comment, we will be giving you space soon to give your own thoughts, to ask questions to any of the panelists. And so, Dr. Nyama, I want to bring you in here because the mayor just pointed out the way that the international community has felt Uganda and the ways that it could have been supporting, especially with regards to the law. And our question for you really builds from the same recognition that international solidarity and networking can play a very important role in pushing back on this escalation of authoritarian practices. You have played an important role in this process through the World Liberty Congress, for example. What can people listening today do to show those in Uganda that we stand with them? And most importantly, how can this attention actually translate to something tangible for Ugandans?
Thank you, Mantete and Jeff and the Resistance Bureau for hosting us for this very important conversation. Before I dive into your questions, I would like to put it very clearly that in Uganda we are in a state of where the government has captured, the regime has captured most of the institutions, ranging from the judiciary, the parliament, rendering, some of these institutions close to useless in the state we are right now. I can tell you that the most disappointing thing is that, just as Lord Mayor Arias Lukago has put it, they abduct a citizen. Then when habeas corpus is filed, the court says and the regime says, we don't have this person. Then after weeks of torturing these persons or those individuals, they are again arraigned in the same court. When they are sick, weakly, and they remand them. After them being remanded, with their deteriorating health, the pain they have suffered from, from the tortures, when a bail is applied for, it is denied. You know, that explains, what we are really going through. And I think it shows clearly why, Lukago, Lord Mayor just put it very clearly, for him now, he is tired of lamenting. I would like to just hint on a few things which, the masses may not know. I'm quite sure you are all aware, during the shutdown, we lost a lot of things. They estimate that they said that there are estimates that Uganda lost about 180 million US dollars because of the internet shutdown. E-businesses were down, a number of things were down. And now, after this election, the regime will come through URA to overtax citizens because they wasted money in bribe, they wasted money in a number of things. So this is how terrible the situation is. And something about the militarization that I like the world to know is that everywhere on the day of elections, the respective EC offices in the respective districts were taken over by the military. I can attest to you areas which are far away from Kampala, like West Nile, which has less media coverage. One of the returning, the polling assistants and the presiding officers, they they said that they regretted applying, for the positions because immediately after voting, votes ballots were, the ballot boxes were brought with the results. They were chased out. Why should military take over such a role of an institution like the Electoral Commission? That explains really what we are going through as Uganda. Now, in central Uganda, I'm sure most people who are in Uganda here, they're aware that there were military in Makerere, in Chiambogo, in Mobs, they were residing there. I can tell you there are people who were recruited last year to join the UPDF. We have some colleagues who were there. Some are doctors, some are lawyers. Because they could not get job, they were recruited into military. And during the electoral process, they were brought and were deployed in central Uganda here, where the area which has the strongest opposition hold. They are distributed to every polling station. And I can attest to you that from what they said, that they were being monitored closely, and where there is no strict supervision, that's when they come in to take, to take in favor of of the incumbent, So these are some of the things which are very gross, which needs, which needs a solution. Now, back to the questions which you have raised. Generally, we as Ugandans, we feel, just as Mayor has put it, not to be has, we feel that maybe, the international community, in one way or the other, they have a very different interest in our country. Why people be like, why is it that the government, the regime that abducts citizens, the regime that kills opposition, the regime that silences dissent, is continuously being funded, funded by pro-democracy, or countries. So it is upon us, comrades here, it's upon us, to lobby for sanctions, um, just as Lord Mayor has put it, to lobby for sanctions. There must be strings attached before we fund project this. We have, Uganda has to comply with these laws A, B, C, D. These are the only way. This is the only way. We can. We can we can hold the government accountable, because I can assure you that the government, we here in Uganda, we lose close to 20 we lose to close to 10 to 20 trillions to corruption. And what compensates it?
I think we lost Dr. Inyama there. Mintade, did you want to go into the? I'm being mindful of the time here. Did you want to go to the Q&A for all of those who have been listening so patiently, or should we continue with panel questions?
I think we could just go straight into the questions, because there's been a lot of requests. So I see about 4 right now. Maybe you can help me select some people to the mic. What we can do is we can take the first 3 and then see if there are any questions there, and then we move on to a second set.
Sounds great.
And then for those that may not be comfortable speaking on the mic, if you do have a question, if you have a reflection that you want to share, like we said earlier, that the space is really built around the idea of solidarity with the people of Uganda. If you are in Uganda, you want to share your own experience, you want to share your own thoughts about what's happening, your own recommendations, and you're not comfortable speaking on the mic, you can send us a DM. If you're open to just dropping it as a comment in the comment section, we'll be able to see that as well. And if anyone wants to engage with what someone has posted in the comment section, we do also encourage that.
Great. Thanks, Mintade. And I see that our friend Stella Nyanzi has been waiting patiently. So Stella, it seems you have some comments you'd like to make. So please go ahead.
Thank you for organizing this space, and thanks to the panelists. I listened to everyone from Comrade Winnie Kiza all the way to Dr. Anyama. And I think for me, as a person who believes in the liberation struggle, the question I have for the panelists, and I believe in each of the speakers, in their different capacities, what are we going to do? We can lament, we can talk, we can do the analysis, but I see the representation of all sorts of minorities, dissidents, freedom fighters, civil society organization, political party members, people out of office, in office. What are we going to do collectively? And I think for me, that in terms of Uganda, not alone, the solidarity is important. I think that Lord Mayor Erias Lukwago Maisalongo has spoken well from his profession as a lawyer. And he sort of pointed towards what can be done by the legal fraternity, regional, Uganda, international. But what can we do as people who are facing the militarization that's been underscored by different people? How do we organize in ways that are local in Uganda, East African, regional, African, but also as world citizens? Can we find ways of organizing against the military? Is it possible to begin talking about the way forward for those of us who are neither lawyers nor enabled with guns? What are we doing moving forward? Yes, in terms of forging solidarity, but also in terms of homegrown ideas from Ugandans in Uganda. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stella. Always appreciate your insight. So let's open that up to the panel. Maybe Agatha, I believe you went first, and you've been again waiting very patiently. If you wanted to address that question from Dr. Nyanzi.
Not me. I think that a question of what can we do is a question that I hear a lot of times. I always think it's not necessarily a question for the speakers. It's a question for Ugandans. I tell people that for me, I do what I think I can do from where I mean the skills I have, the resources I have. I give information, and once the information is given, another person can decide on what is supposed to be done or what they think. I think that I believe in everyone making a contribution that they can make. I don't think we do that collectively. There are some people who just ask, how come this one, you haven't done that? How come Bobi Wine hasn't organized protests? How come hasn't called for protests or something like that? And I think that it was in Tunisia when a person that no one even knew about, who set himself on fire, sparked the protests that led to the fall of that government. So I am in no way not. Um, I have no position to come from to tell people what to do. I think that I have been wondering myself what more I can do after seeing that what I have done for the last maybe 2-3 years hasn't changed our situation, and I don't know how. You know, there were protests in Tanzania, and they made me realize that we deal with murderers that don't care whether they kill tens of thousands to remain in power. And then that made me start thinking, where, what do we do? Can we ask people to make that sacrifice? Or how many people are willing to make that sacrifice? But if you ask me what I think can work, I think that, yeah, Ugandans rising up is the only thing that can work. Like in large numbers, large enough to say we overwhelm the system. If there are 100 people, 1,000 people, they'll just be killed like flies. Those that tried during the elections were killed because there were pockets of protests in Kampala and the neighboring places. Yeah, where people just, the army just came and shot people, including those protesting and those who were not. In a suburb called Bulenga, in Luwero, those who were just saying, no, we don't think this is the result that was, I mean, this is a true reflection of the elections, both at parliamentary level and at presidential level. So, yeah, in the answering the idea, what will help, I would say that if we just have a way of knowing that every disgruntled Ugandan, and there are many, the young person who is saying that this is not right, that we really deserve at least the bare minimum, not rigging an election and, you know, hunting the person that most people think was voted for overwhelmingly, killing all his supporters, arresting thousands and disappearing others. I mean, it looks like they keep doing more and more to see what will provoke Ugandans enough, you know, maybe to do something, or they have just gotten used to knowing that the Ugandans cannot do something. So me, where it is, where we have exposed, where we have written, where we have asked, and everything has failed, I would think that Ugandans need to just collectively rise up and say enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Agatha. And Lord Mayor, I'd like to just come to you really quickly and give you a chance to respond to that question from Dr. Nyanzi, because much of your commentary was focused on looking forward and not looking back. What do you believe are the most effective ways to maintain pressure and sustain momentum for reform in Uganda?
I'm afraid we are pressed between a rock and a hard surface. All the constitutional avenues to orderly succession to power are closed. All the doors are closed. That's the absurd situation we are contending with here. Elections, as our Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs said, cannot in any way usher in the much needed change. That's what the Honorable Nobati Mao here said. And of course, he was speaking on behalf of the powers that be. And he said what they are going to do, they will discuss it in the rooms that matter. So that succession agenda is what we need to deal with. Because right now there is a monarchy, there is a cabal of leaders who are trying now to assert their will on the people of Uganda. So what we need to do as the citizenry. Yes, I agree with Agatha. I agree with all those who are suggesting that the people need to rise up. But of course, we must appreciate the dynamics obtaining right now, that there is a sense of public despondence and the sense of hopelessness. Yes, people desperately need change, but they see no way out of this situation, because we have taken the route of violence before and nobody wants to go back there. Not me, not Agatha, not anyone on this platform, not any Ugandan would want to take that route again. It has been disastrous, catastrophic. We wouldn't want to take that route. But the regime is pushing the citizenry to take that route of violence, which is really very, very unfortunate. So what we need to do right now, first and foremost, empower the citizenry to assert their authority in a very peaceful and civil manner. How do we empower them? Civil society here, unlike in other jurisdictions and democracies, actually even across border here in Kenya, they have at least some civil society organization which is relatively strong. But here, it has been weakened to the hilt. So what we need to do right now is to embolden the citizenry to assert their authority. I wish Jeffrey and others would read the provisions of Article 3 of our Constitution. They are very, very instructive, because they looked at the history of this country and said, if there is a regime that veers off the constitutional path, it's a cardinal obligation on part of all the citizenry to rise up to the occasion, do whatever they can within their means, and restore the constitutional order. That is a constitutional command. It's not even just a right, but a command. So that needs to be done. And for us, some of us who have been in activism, we have been emphasizing that point quite a lot, that we need to embolden, we need to empower the citizenry to create that civic competence so that the people of Uganda can assert their will. And in this particular case, we need the assistance from the international community. I'm sorry to keep repeating myself on that. Secondly, this conspiracy amongst the regional leaders must be dealt with decisively. There is that conspiracy between Ruto, Museveni, and a couple of others to suppress us, to clamp down on the citizenry. How on earth can a head of state like ours, Yenu Kaguta Museveni, speak of people being put in a fridge, and that goes unchallenged by the international community? You got those Kenyans who came here to just help brothers and sisters who were oppressed. They were kidnapped, kept in the cooler for over 2 months. And proudly, Museveni said, prison. He said, they have been in a fridge. How can that happen this day and age and doesn't invite sanctions? How can the CDF, the commander of defense forces, talk about a basement? You are talking about a dungeon in this day and age, and it does not invite international sanctions. So there is a need for them to push the international community, whether they indict these leaders or not, but at least action must be taken by the international community to impose sanctions on these perpetrators of these financial crimes. These regional leaders here, starting with Gen. Museveni, Ruto, Suluhu, and others, they must be indicted. They must be sanctioned. That is a call we must make as humanity. And this is not for Ugandans alone. It's for all of us. The voice should cut across, and then we deal with this decisively. The final one, how do we probably get the African Union, pushed against the wall? AU, because it is also another tool of oppression. We have to see how this can be dealt with, probably at a UN level. Because you cannot have AU watching these transgressions, these violations, and no action is being taken. You've heard previously they were talking about, the international community condemning the coups that have been happening in West Africa. In many of those countries in West Africa, they have been condemning them. They're saying we are not recognizing them. But one way or the other, you find those who carry out coups, probably they have reasons that they feel suffocated. They have no options within the constitutional framework, within the political framework in their respective jurisdictions. So we need to push the AU against the wall to see some interventions being made. I thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you
Mantate,
so
may
much.
I come in just quickly?
Of course, yeah.
Sorry, Honourable Lord Mayor, there is a big coalition of political leaders and civil society members from across the continent that are fighting to do what was done in Tanzania, that has essentially become a pariah state. Intel Watch and the World Jurists Association, we prepared a petition, a submission, Article 15 submission to the International Criminal Court that has now contacted President Samia to understand what is happening. And we believe that investigation is going to be open. This has brought deep fear into her. And has unsettled the regime and has changed the internal calculations of the regime. The Commonwealth has given a time and a deadline for reforms in Tanzania, otherwise they would be suspended. The European Union came in with deep criticism, but then also gave it teeth by freezing aid. And so slowly, people are doing something. And so we know there have been lobby groups already now at the European Union, even within the Pan-African Parliament, to address the issue of Uganda. I know that the World Jurists Association, our partners, are going to prepare an ICC submission. So we are just gathering evidence, and we are trying to work through this process. And I just wanted to mention that. As we're not sitting quietly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you so much, Mayor, for your reflections. I think the question that Dr. Stella asked earlier about what needs to be done is very important, and I think the other panelists can sit with the question as we go through some of the reflections from the audience. And when you come in to speak later, you can also reflect from your standing point in the work that you do, or just looking at things in the country and outside what can be done. Because I think in responding to that as well, it helps us to think about how you sustain the pressure that is being given now, but also to ensure that it doesn't fade. It also speaks into how we cultivate the hope of many people that might be losing it, but also just pushes on the idea of how do we, in practical ways, every day as ordinary people, and collectively defend the rule of law and human rights. And Agatha as well, thank you so much for your reflections earlier. I know that you came in and said that you really can't speak to what people should be doing, but I think in reflecting on some of the things that you've been doing, it's also just pointing us to some of the ways in which everyday people in the human rights space, political parties, and just ordinary citizens are doing different things. I think something you mentioned earlier of things that I felt again points to the idea of how do we learn from what is being done right now so that the mistakes that have been made or what has not actually worked out, we build on that to actually continue pushing. So thank you so much for your reflections earlier. So what I'll do now is to take 3 people in the audience. So the order that I will take the speakers in, Agnes, you'll come in first, Agnes Kaziva, and then after you, I'll take the NUP Diaspora Forum, and then I'll take Anne Mugisha, and I'll ask you all to just be brief in order for us to ensure that more people speak into the conversation. So Agnes, over to you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the former speakers who have given input as to the issues going on in Uganda. I'd like to most specifically thank the last speaker, the most recent speaker, who has highlighted the different solutions and undertakings that have been done internationally to assist with the situation in Uganda. But most importantly, to reflect or add on the previous submissions by the previous speakers, more specifically to the question of what can be done in Uganda. I believe that as a culture, I'm a Ugandan right now in the diaspora, but I'm very familiar with our culture that I believe that it makes people believe that there is someone who is coming to save us. And I believe that I've heard that in different submissions, that the international community, for instance, as a term, generally should come and help us. Or, as a culture, we believe that someone else is going to do it. But as some speakers spoke earlier, this is something that everyday people should do. You and I and everyone else should do. And I believe one of the things that we can take on is to choke and suffocate the regime out of the country. This needs to be done immediately. We need to, care about who we buy from. For instance, we need to stop supporting their businesses because they do use the money to support the brutality and buy the military weaponry and pay the military to brutalize and kill people. So if we stop funding their businesses and stop giving them money and stop, supporting any undertakings that they earn money from. Including the people in the diaspora, for instance, minimize how much money you send back home because they do collect taxes off of that money, for instance. And I know we need to continue supporting our families, but just taking personal steps like that and be aware and intentional in your everyday decisions as to how much of your everyday decisions do support the illegitimate government from continuing to exist in Uganda. And another thing, of course, is to again, it goes back to choking them and suffocating them out of existence. Is we need to stand up against them in different ways. And locally, for instance, the people know the people who were pushing these regime undertakings, the brutality, spying on people and making people get kidnapped and disappeared. And so we need to make sure that the people who are doing that, we, for instance, uh, try to avoid working with them, avoid dealing with them, avoid welcoming them in your communities, avoid. So try to make sure that we sabotage their own operations within the communities so that those operations do not continue. And that, definitely needs to be done locally because everyone knows those people in the communities. The people who are making this happen are part of the communities in which the everyday Ugandans live. But most importantly, I wanted to point out that I think we are all aware on this forum that the government of Uganda has been sabotaged or overtaken by one family and friends. We've been watching as they see as Mohozi has been posting and boasting about kidnapping people and killing people, and how he wants to hunt down the newly elected legitimate president and kill him potentially or hurt him, and the military coming out, the military and the police and other legitimate government organizations coming out and saying we are not looking for him, we're not, he doesn't have any crime, so we're not therefore legally looking for him. So I think that the Hosi has taken over the government and uses the military for his own personal bidding. He uses the military to station them where he wants, uses them to station them at the home of Bobby Wine, the newly elected president, and he uses them to do whatever he wants without any accountability. And that calls for immediate action, of course, by everyone, every Ugandan, despite the fact that we may have different beliefs or party lines. This is something that pertains to Uganda, Uganda's at large as a community. And I think that everyone should be concerned if the military is in the power of one person and that military is, with all their weaponry, is at his disposal to use in his personal vendetta in his personal dealings, then we should be concerned as a community and need to get the regime out of power immediately instead of waiting for someone to come and assist us in doing so.
Thank you so much, Agnes, for your submissions. A reminder for all the people that will be speaking from the audience to just keep it brief in order for us to have a lot more people. But also you can use the comment section or you can post on your timelines. You can tag us, we'll make sure to repost, or if you drop it in the comment, anyone in the audience can also engage with it. I will give the mic to Anne, and if you can hear us, you can proceed.
That would be me, right? Anne, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much. Well, I agree with so many things that have been said, and I will not be repetitive. I'm also very conscious of the time. I was happy to see Sarah. I think she has left, but I was happy to see Sarah is out. But my point is the cavalry is not coming. The cavalry is not coming. For those of you who know my activism, and I've been in activism in United States and abroad for more than 20 years, the cavalry will not come. Look at how many people have died in Iran in the hope of the cavalry coming and rescuing them. We have to find our own solutions. And when the international community jumps in, they find us moving. If we are going to focus on them and rely on them to solve our problems, there's going to be so much heartbreak. Now, what can we do? We've already had examples of passive resistance, okay? Passive resistance. And we can go into tactics of what do we boycott and what do we do. But I only wanted to raise one here that I think that we are all complicit. Lord Mayor was talking about the complicity of the international community. I want to talk about the complicity of the opposition, you know? As long as we ourselves do not have enough discipline to stay out of the framework that has been imposed by the authoritarian regime, meaning we are all running around participating in elections that we know are already rigged. And then coming to analyze the rigged election and trying to say that we could have done better if this or that. I just feel like we're going around in circles. I think that we should have a serious discussion of if we really think that we are a strong opposition, or if we intend to be, how are we going to deal with the disaffection, or should I say the splintering of the opposition, where we are all like grasshoppers in a bottle fighting each other? That is within our power. How can we deal with it? Number two, at what point do we stop participating in elections and other activities that are rigged before we even participate? So I think for me that's where the focus should be. The international community jumps into the thing when it's already moving. We cannot turn to them to say, oh, why don't you sanction? Oh, why don't you do this? We will die in the millions like Rwandese before they even move to help us. For me, and with all due respect, our colleagues, our friends who are speaking out now, you know how where Museveni's PR machinery is in these countries. The reason that they are able to go on doing what they're doing is because for years they have already laid the foundation of their PR network. They know what they need to do to appease whatever government might be or whatever administration might be in power here in the United States and elsewhere, so that they look the other way as they do the things they're doing at home. So I'll stop because I know there's so many other people lined up, but I'm so happy. I came in quite by accident. I was a little late. Good to see you all, Winnie and everybody, Stella. Um, let's do what we can, and our friends will, I'm sure, be happy to pick up from where we are as we move. But let's look into what we can do ourselves as activists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll now give the mic to NUP Diaspora Platform.
Thank you so much, Mantate, and also the Resistance Bureau. My name is Marvin, and I'm based in Boston, and actually lead one of the biggest nationality platform chapter within the United States, and that's the Boston chapter. For a long time, we've been doing a lot of advocacy, uh, writing petitions, demonstrating, you know, enlightening all the different things to the US government. Literally what Museveni has been doing probably since 2018 and in the past up to date. It's unfortunate that to me, I feel there's a deaf ear when it comes to we so much relying on the international community. And in particular, as uh, Lord Mayor Elias Lukwago mentioned, there's been silence from the international community because they look at Museveni's government as the government that is pretty much fulfilling their interests. And also at the same time, they wanted their businesses to flourish in every way. It's not that they don't know what is going on. They pretty much know the killings. They know the shamble elections that he's been holding. And in a small nutshell, they cannot get rid of him. So if we keep relying on the international community, I don't think we're going to get an answer. Anna's mentioned that one of the things that Museveni has invested in for the last 40 years is PR. Of recent, just like yesterday, the lady that was meeting Trump was with him in Entebbe a couple of months back before the elections. And now she's passing on the message. And what is Trump interested? Is interested in business, is interested in where can I cut the deal? And now we're looking at the local people undergoing through a ruthless military government that even if they do anything, there's nothing that is going to be done. Where are the international institutions that educated these big leaders like Mohozi and other chiefs that have been involved in these things? Why can't they like write off their certificates or their qualifications that they were given in these different institutions? To me, I feel we are not getting the right feedback. And yes, we've tried all the means participating in elections, which is what the international community is looking for, looking at that democracy. And Museveni has used it as a trick to trick them. And he has the terms of like, whenever he wants justification regarding his action, I've killed ABCD because they were terrorists. And as soon as the US government hears that word terrorists, they're like, oh, he was right to do it. And so other international community members. Museveni has mastered that I must surround myself with only those leaders that I've put in leadership. The likes of Ruto, the likes of Suru, the likes of Salva Kiir in the north, Kagame down there. I think the only country that pretty much they failed to come into good terms is the Congo. And that's why you see they're trying that level best. So we are in a fixed kind of situation. We have nowhere to run to. You cannot run to Tanzania. If anything happened, it's been told there are soldiers that are in Uganda that don't speak the local language, and you indeed see they are brutalizing the local citizens. Probably they were picked up from Tanzania. Probably they were picked up from their mercenary base to come and torture Ugandans. This is not about National Unity Platform, comrades, whoever is here. This is about the people of Uganda and friends of East Africa. Whatever that is ongoing right now, it's not only for Uganda. Those advocates that are up there, the Intel Watch, thanks a lot for those different petitions that you've been putting through. But some of the petitions that have been put by us, they end up on desks that actually Museveni has placed his own people in these different offices. Like we send a report to Human Rights Watch, and the person that received there is a Museveni's person, and that is trashed. It's never addressed. And this has been ongoing. It's the same thing that you're going to find in ISIS. And I believe, Intel Watch, you've succeeded with the Tanzanian, at least now that ICC has notified the Tanzanian president, and now she's on tension. But guess what? So much has been happening in Uganda for a long, long, long time, but nothing has been done. And reports have gone to ISIS. They probably end up on somebody's desk. The prosecutor was in Uganda a couple of months back, and guess what? Our reports were put in trash. And this is something that I ignored for the last 40 years. We've had massacres in Kasese, we've had massacres in Jinja, in Kampala. I mean, every highlight that should at least bring Museveni and his entire team to books, to accountability. But nothing has been done. But guess what? Today, the United States is willing to go into a deal of healthcare. They're going to give them millions. World Bank is willing to give in money. EU is willing to do something. We need to wake up as East African people. Ugandans, as Anne stated, the cover is not going to come. It is us who are going to fight and open up and get rid of this regime. The international community, let it find us when we're right there. But if we keep on waiting, today, 100 people have been arrested. Every hour, every second, somebody is being tortured in Uganda, somebody is being killed, somebody is being arrested. Right now, the blockades on different roads, they stop you. Open your phone. If your phone has something in it related to Bobby Wine, you are arrested. So everyday sun, everyday activities. So thank you so much. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The international community has gotten to wake up, and we need to hear from them and succeed. Thank you so much. Back to you.
Thank you very much to our friend from Boston who does a lot of work with diaspora groups here in the US. I know your membership is very strong here in the U.S. I see you and your folks often in the halls of Congress, and I imagine you are very involved in some of the recent rather strong statements that have come on a bipartisan basis, actually, from the U.S. Senate, both the House Majority and House Minority Democrats side. If people have not seen those statements, we can certainly post them on our social media profiles so people can read them. So thank you for your efforts there. I see some of your colleagues listening into this space as well. So thank you for that. It looks like we have one additional person in the queue, and Bob Liam Monday, you've been waiting very patiently. So over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers who have spoken. Fellow Ugandans, pleasure to you from the bondage of dictatorship. It is a collective responsibility. If we put aside our differences and indifferences and we fight towards a common goal, that is the restoration of justice. We love so dearly. My brothers and sisters, there is an ongoing persecution of the National Unity Platform, specifically the opposition, are not really amplifying their voices to hold the judiciary to account and the executive to account, illegitimate as it is, right? So meaning that we are calling upon all civil rights organizations in the country, the local ones, the Back Council, the Uganda, Uganda human rights, leave alone the chairman, but we need people who are working their reign to come and amplify their voices. People of Uganda, to agitate our dignity as civilized people. We cannot afford, to act normally in abnormal situations, because Mr. Museveni, ever since he captured the political of Uganda and put the judiciary under siege and the legislature under siege, you can see that the gross human rights violation are on a rise. And Museveni, he is now the sole proprietor of Uganda's affair. So having passed on that clarion call that we have to come to board and bring back sanity to Uganda. Brothers and sisters, allow me to pass this information to all you congregants here. Brothers and sisters, it is that Mr. Museveni, he is planning to assassinate Justice Byabaka Mongenyi on Saturday. They are about to convene a meeting with all electoral commissioners or people who were there. And Museveni is so fearful because the international community is, asking, where were you getting the results you read? Why was a lot of persecution? Why did the election appear to be more as a military operation, right? So Mr. Museveni, ASP Asime indicated that Mr. Museveni, he is going to switch the guards of Justice Mugenyi Byabakama while they are going to Mbale this Saturday, and that they are going to set an accident whereby Byabakama will be strangled by the switched security officers and the car will make it to appear as an accident. So this takes us back to history, whereby Bishop General Room, whose lives were claimed in such a similar pattern, it is being redeployed, brothers and sisters. Museveni, he is trying to clear the witnesses, the people who coerced and held on gunpoint to falsify the results and suffocate the will of Ugandans. So if Justice Byabakama, anything happens to him, because we need him, we might see that the international community is not acting, but Museveni is being grilled. The restoration of the internet, it was not on his own free will. It is because of the international community. So let us keep petitioning. Let us keep picketing wherever we are in diaspora. The international community is doing its work diplomatically, and it's going. So what we need is to pressurize Museveni to refrain from claiming the lives of, prominent people. You could hear the love my brother Lukwago, climate hard within camp, but the status quo made him to deviate from justly.
Thank you so much, Monday. Really appreciate your input and insights there, as well as everyone who contributed today. As we start to wrap up today, I wanted to give our panel one last chance to chime in. And for me, it seems a broad theme today is that there evidently is a large disparity between the reality on the ground in Uganda and what is being reported internationally. And of course, there's always a risk that if and we've seen these headlines this week. If you put out a headline such as Museveni wins another election in Uganda, or Museveni wins a seventh term, for example, people on the outside looking in, may think the process was somehow legitimate, right? Or somehow free, fair, and credible, which of course we all know it was not. So my question to the panel as we close out, how can we support our friends in the media, our allies in the media, to ensure that their readers and the global community writ large can really understand, can really grasp what's happening in Uganda, what Museveni's continued stay in power since 1986, longer than most Ugandans have been alive. What does that mean for ordinary Ugandans? Honorable Kiza, it'd be great to go to you first, then Agatha, Lord Mayor Arias, and Dr. Anyama in that order. It'd be great to get your thoughts on that before we close out. So, Honorable Kiza, over to you if you're still with us and able.
Thank you so much. And I will continue to thank you for this solidarity space and for giving us an opportunity to air out what is really hurting us so much. We see people think we are in a democracy while we are actually in a dictatorship, fully blown dictatorship. And I don't know how much we should continue talking about this for everyone to know. And I would like to thank the Resistance Bureau for letting us know that we are not alone. Now, in reference to the question that you have asked, this is one way in which you can support our sisters and brothers in the media by putting up spaces where we can freely air out what is happening in Uganda and connecting us to people who really can support the situation back home. Many people have spoken about holding our government accountable, continue pushing for sanctions. It works, like a report has been given about the sanctions in Tanzania. Some of us wrote to the ICC and petitioned the ICC, but every time a petition reaches the ICC, you see the prosecutor coming to Uganda and then visits Rwachitura, then visits Museveni's farms, and you see them happy with Museveni, and I keep asking myself, how can I report my case to you? And you visit the person I have brought before you, and you are now making merry. And these are some of the things that hurt us as Ugandans. While we work so hard to ensure that we put our house in order, and while we work so hard to ensure that we fight like Dr. Stella Nyanze did ask, we have fought. Ugandans have been killed. We have tried our best. And that's why I think the Lord Mayor Arias Lukwago is crying out to the international community. It is our prayer that you continue working with some few media actors who still have some energy to fight on. Many of the media houses in Uganda operate without licenses, and this is deliberate because they don't want them to do things that are not in the interest of the regime. And of course, when they do things that are not in the interest of the regime, the first thing is to tell them, we are going to close your offices because you don't have an operational license. And so a few organizations, of course, like Agora, who keep trying to push, keep on with the X spaces, give information using every available social platform that can expose the authoritarian leadership of President Museveni, the family rule that we are having here in Uganda. Can you imagine the other day the president taking the chief justice to be sworn in his personal home, his country home, kind of telling citizens that now this is part of my family, I'm doing my family affairs, so Chief Justice, come and be sworn in my home. So ridiculous. Ugandans have spoken against it, but we need many more people to know about this by using the various means of communication, the social media platforms that can be available to our disposal, use the many media networks and media houses that you have, host as many Ugandans who could be in position to speak about the ills in our society so that this message gets to everyone. But much more than that, let's continue with asking for sanctions to be put against some of the leaders in this country. Muhoozi, for heaven's sake, should not be set free, should not be left to just kill people and he's not talked about. His father has killed many and nobody wants to speak about him. I don't know whether President Trump is happy with what the military in Uganda is doing, because the US government pays money to the Ministry of Defense for the professionalization of the army. I don't know whether they are acting professionally, just like they wanted them to act, because that's why taxpayers in America are paying money to the government of Uganda for professionalization of the army. So some of these questions should be asked to the governments that give us money. Some of these questions should be asked to the organizations that we belong to. That's why the Lord Mayor is saying, where is the UN? Where is the African Union? We are members to these organizations and we need accountability as a country. So continue doing this, continue reaching out to as many Ugandans as possible and engaging them on the different social media platforms and the different media houses, so that our message, our plight can go out to as many people as possible. That in that way, you will have supported the media houses in Uganda. Can you also imagine that only 2 media houses were allowed to be part of those that were at the National Tally Center on the election day? Some of the media houses were not allowed to participate in broadcasting the results as they were coming, leave alone not even being allowed to get closer to the Tally Center. All this shows how our government has suppressed media participation. And like the Lord Mayor was saying, much of the civic engagement would be done by civil society actors. Many of the civil society organizations that were dealing with civic education were summarily suspended, the activities were suspended, and this left us helpless. So continue with the engagements like you are doing right now. As for now, I would like to thank you for the Solidarity X space and for everybody who has attended and contributed to it. I
Thank
thank you.
you, Honorable Winnie Kiza. Really appreciate your sober analysis as always. And if people are interested to hear more of Honorable Kiza's assessment of the election, we had a really great interview and conversation with her, which you can find on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com/The Resistance Bureau. We had a really great chat there. Lord Mayor, your name was invoked in the Honorable's response. So over to you to close out.
Well, just a quick one on the issue of the call for the intervention of the international community. It's not that I wanted, to ask for like help. I want to put it in context, in proper perspective. It's not that I'm calling upon Ugandan to, just sit back with their arms folded. They don't take action and then wait for somebody to liberate it. No. I feel like we have done our best. I feel like Ugandans have really tried their best under the prevailing circumstances. All options have been tried. You remember the submission I made. We have even gone to the extent of picking up arms. This regime came to power by the barrel of the gun. And as we speak today, it's the gun rule we are having. And to reverse that, it's a total order. We have a citizenry which is so much emasculated that they cannot in any way put up a spirited fight that will extricate us from this kind of bondage we have. So what really needs to be done now, and you'll allow me put on, these lenses of a practicing advocate in this particular area of rule of land, constitutionalism, as well as human rights, that we have exhausted all the domestic avenues. You cannot get justice from within the domestic framework we have. I wish you could appreciate the frustration some of us are facing when you are handling many of these cases, like Dr. Kiza Besigye, and you are helpless. You are before a judge, you ask him to recuse himself, he refuses. You ask him to refer the matter to the Constitutional Court, he refuses. You ask for bail, he dismisses the application. You ask for access to medical doctors, he refuses. Every application is dismissed, and then he tells you, please, you have to bow before me. This is the frustrations we are saying. So how can the citizenry come in that particular case? It's practically, literally impossible rather. So under those circumstances, the reason we are saying, look here, the right we have to access the international criminal justice system is duly guaranteed within the institutional legal framework we have internationally. It's a universal right we have. After the Holocaust, we opened up a new chapter. We got a new order in the world, and that order must be respected. It knows no boundaries. So the indictment at ICC we are talking about is a command of the Rome Statute. We are signatory to the Rome Statute. The Honorable Winnie Chiza said yes, and I entirely agree with her. You get these reports presented before the ICC, then they come here to begin the preliminary investigations. The would-be culprits are the ones who are hosting them to a cup of tea, and they are just having conversations. So we are saying, look, what is it that the international community can do to push the ICC to have these people indicted? The way Ruto was indicted sometime back in the aftermath of 2007 election violence, Uhuru and others, the way they have indicted many of these people, Thomas Rubanga and others, the way they picked Bashir, the way they indicted. So how do we push this to happen? That's the thing for me. I believe that can crack the whip, that can help us deal with this impunity. And the sanctions that can be imposed, it's not a call for them to help us. It's not a favor that we are asking. This is a right we have, we're entitled to. We cannot be butchered like this. We cannot be tortured the way they were being tortured. And then they go away scot-free. Torture is an international crime. This is the whole point we are making. And I am kindly asking all of you, the participants on this platform, and all of us who want to to get this situation out of hand, the likes of Mohozi, the likes of these people who are just, doing all these kinds of heinous crimes, must be indicted. We must do this. So that is the whole point I was making, because all these other things we have done, we have tried our best. They are not helping so much. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I think it's a critical point that you make, reminding today's listeners and everyone paying attention to the situation in Uganda that Uganda, as a country under General Museveni, has obligations under international law. It is a signatory to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. It is a signatory and ratified the African Charter on Democracy. It is a signatory to and ratified the various international conventions, including the ICCPR. So these are not, Western imposed principles or wish lists that are being, unnecessarily set upon the country. These are obligations to which the country and the Museveni government itself has agreed to abide by. So I think it's always really important to bring up those points and to remind people that that is in fact the case. With that said, Dr. Inyama, we're coming to you to close out. If you have any final closing thoughts, be very brief, as we are running very, very short on time. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to our audience one last time. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, and colleagues present. I would like to just to say, of course, the ICJ, ICC, there are already cases which are filed about some of the abuses which are already happening.
Mentari, it looks like we've lost Dr. Inyama. Nick, I know you're still with us. If you wanted to come in and give some closing remarks before we have Mentari close us out.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I just think there's a couple of things maybe we want to say. Paula spoke eloquently earlier about some of the work done in Tanzania, and I think that's also had a significant effect in making the regime think again about the level of violence. And I think maybe the other thing that's really important to keep in mind is that it's not going to be this way forever. The NRM regime is going to fragment. At some point, Museveni will have to go, whether it's because of ill health or another reason. And one of the things we've often seen is that those moments are the moments in which the regime fragments, and that fragmentation creates opportunities for reform. So even if the situation looks bleak today, even if it looks like in the next 2 years we're still going to see similar levels of repression, there's a really good opportunity in the next 5-10 years for significant political change. And I think one of the things we need to be thinking about is not just, how do we mobilize today, although that is critically important and we should do it, but it is also what are the opportunities that are coming up and how do we put ourselves in a position where, the things that people care about on this call, democracy, human rights, accountability, are what comes out of those moments of change. So let's not just think short term, let's think long term as well. Let's learn the lessons of other countries where we've seen those kinds of transitions and the opportunities that it's created. And let's take all of those opportunities, as Paula talked about before, to keep raising this internationally. Because we need that coordinated international and domestic mobilization to be able to move the needle on a situation like this. So thanks so much, everyone. It's been a real honor, as always, to hear all of the brilliant and brave speakers that we have. And hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again about Uganda in a few months' time with more positive news about developments on the ground.
Thanks a lot, Nick. Really appreciate it. Dr. Inyama, I know you're back with us. You have about 30 seconds, no pressure, but feel free to give your closing thoughts here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Jeff, and members present. Just as I said before going off, there are already cases which have been filed about against the individuals which who have been mentioned by Lord Mayor here, and there are challenges. There are challenges. There is really there is a lot of challenges as they have mentioned. For some of the cases, to be brought into implementation, for these people to be held accountable, it's really not that directly feasible. What I can say is that there is really need for us, the pro-democracy actors and activists, to to push through EU and through these other pro-democracy countries, to hold the government accountable. For me, I believe since they fund a number of projects and programs in Uganda here, that will be one of the ways, of holding the regime accountable, because they depend on the US, they depend on the EU countries. So why not to push EU Parliament to hold this to hold the government accountable? Why not to push the government of France, the UK, to hold the government accountable for some of the atrocities which they're committing? I believe that is going to be the easiest way, because if you have to be relying on the regional bodies, I can say the regional body is just, it's a group of dictators. Actually, the EU is fundamentally built by the dictators we have here in Africa, including President Museveni. So I believe that could be, the best way, to handle the situation. Then, of course, some of things cannot be discussed here, but really there is need, if there are platforms that can be offered to some of these opposition politicians and those who have been doing good work, I will believe some of these evidences, when presented, it can be used for holding the regime accountable. Otherwise, thank you so much for standing with us here in Uganda. It's great to know that Uganda is not alone. Thank you so much.
I was just going to say thank you, Dr. Inyama, and thank you to David Lewis Rubangoya. We were unable to get him on today, but he has been listening. We've just had some technical difficulties. We're not entirely sure what is happening there, but thank you, David, for all that you do, for all that you have been doing to both bolster the pro-democracy coalition in Uganda and to stand up for human rights and democracy in the country and regionally. We really appreciate all that you do, and we hope to have you on another time. And with that said, Mantade, over to you to close us out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you so much to everyone for joining us and ensuring this is a very engaging and informative conversation. And while it works to keep the spotlight on Uganda, including ideas about what can be done to advance real change and accountability, we also hope that you continue to show your solidarity in your different ways in the different spaces that you occupy. Thank you to the panelists for expanding our understanding of what is happening in Uganda. for your commitment to human rights and the rule of law, and also just for the example that you continue to set in your different spaces.
And to Nick and Paula as well. Just to reiterate, and so folks are aware, a recording of this discussion will be made accessible on our YouTube and Twitter pages, as well as our website, where you can also check out all of our past shows. I mentioned the previous interview we did with Honorable Winnie Kiza among them. Please help us to keep this conversation and these important issues alive by following us, the Resistance Bureau, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
So thank you so much. Take care.